Hey everybody, welcome to the Fantasy Few podcast. I am Stone Darrow, followed by my colleagues Mason Reed
Hey guys.
and Paul Cotton.
Hey, how we doing, everybody?
We bring you the latest and most up-to-date news to simplify the world of fantasy football for you guys and hopefully give you guys a few laughs along the way. Before we jump into this podcast, I would like to shout out our social medias. If you guys are watching this on YouTube, we are on Spotify as well with the same exact name. Vice versa, if you're on Spotify, we are on YouTube as well. Go ahead and give our socials a look. We have a Facebook called The Fantasy Few. It's a group chat on there. On Instagram, we are The Fantasy Few, no capitals. And on Twitter, we are The Fantasy Few. Every first word is capitalized.
All right. We are the Fantasy Few, baby. All right, we're back. Episode 2. I'm slightly jacked up.
Sorry, guys.
On Mountain Dew.
Sorry, guys. He's a little anxious to talk about his favorite team today because we are going to start off today by talking about the NFC West, and his favorite team just so happens to be the Los Angeles Rams. He's going to be showing us a little bit of his bias for them, I guess, today. So, what do you want to talk about the Rams, Mason? I mean, you obviously know the most about those guys.
All right. So, Rams are my favorite team. They have been for a very long time. I remember growing up, going to their training camps out in Macomb, where I actually ended up going to school. But anyways, that's besides the point. They started to make me mad. After a little while, they decided they were going to move from St. Louis back to LA, whatever, not the biggest deal in the world. But then they decided they wanted to trade away the house for Jared Goff. And then they kind of lost me a little bit. Then the Jeff Fisher era, I was just kind of wasn't feeling it. But Sean McVay came back. He brought my fire back. I kind of liked Jared Goff for a little bit, but I knew the whole time he kind of sucked. But now he's a Lion. That's not our problem anymore. All right. So what should we talk about? Probably recent news. We ended up drafting Tutu Atwell, the first pick of our draft, which was, I think, the second round. But anyways, he had COVID. He's activated. He's ready to rock. It's probably going to serve mainly as a kick returner, punt returner until he can prove himself. He's kind of small. Don't know how that's going to translate. But he's kind of hanging out with Deshaun Jackson, and I hope he kind of becomes the mini Deshaun Jackson. Other things going on.
He's a very good player to learn under, obviously.
Oh yeah,
seasoned veteran. I don't know how he's going to be for the Rams this year. I don't think he'll be as good as people expect him to be, but I mean, he's definitely going to be a great mentor to some of those guys.
Yeah. Other things I could talk about. I know Aaron Donald has been kind of raving about Stafford. Best quarterback he's ever played with, obviously. I don't really know who he played with in college, but I know that he's played with Goff the majority of his career, and that just sucks. Stafford, we can kind of talk about that a little more. He aggravated his surgically repaired thumb. They're not too concerned about it. I was looking at the reports. They just kind of let him sit out a little bit. Hopefully that doesn't nag him over the season because we're looking for a big year from Stafford, baby.
I would say from Stafford, I mean, we have a list of our busts, guarantees, and sleepers and stuff, and I personally had Matthew Stafford as my guarantee. I think, we've seen him play in Detroit his whole career, and he's been a very solid fantasy option every single year of his career, obviously, besides the years he got hurt. And now you're putting him in an offense with Robert Woods and Cooper Kupp and, well, not Cam Akers anymore, but Xavier Jones, and Darrell Henderson. I think Xavier Jones is pretty good. But I think Matt Stafford is just poised to have a breakout year this year and be possibly a top 5 fantasy quarterback. I don't know if you guys have any...
I feel like you kind of left out his little security blanket, Stone. Tyler Higbee.
Yeah, I did.
Yep. So with Gerald Everett out in Seattle now, which is kind of weird, interdivisional, from one team to the other. There's probably going to be a little bit of a rivalry come that first game of the season between those two. But I think Tyler Higbee is going to be a stud. He kind of showed it a little bit while playing second fiddle or splitting time with Gerald Everett, and now he's just the guy over there. And we all kind of know that Stafford loves to incorporate his tight ends whenever he has the chance and whenever he has good ones on the roster. So,
I would argue, though, I think Tyler Higbee's going to be fine, a good fantasy addition to your team this year. But TJ Hawkinson's better than Tyler Higbee. And TJ Hawkinson's numbers aren't as incredible as some people make them out to be. Like everyone says he's like the clear cut number 4 tight end like the last couple of years now, and his stats are fine, but I don't know. I think people reach too high on the guy a little bit.
No, I just have one thing to say about that. Goff has zero vision. He doesn't know how to. He will stare down his receiver, and then he will get his check down. Goff will probably fall in love with Hawkinson. So that you said, I think because Hawkinson is rated as a top, whatever you said, tight end this year. I think he's like top 5 actually, but I think he actually might have a chance to produce top 5 numbers with Goff, just because. I think he's going to be his main receiver.
To put the numbers into perspective, the only reason I like Tyler Higbee's targets will go up this year, I believe. Last year, TJ Hawkinson had 101 targets, and what he did with that was 723 yards and 6 touchdowns. And I mean, for someone who's really talked high upon and sought after in the fantasy community, I think Higbee isn't as good as Hawkinson. I just don't know if I could see really him putting up really solid starter kind of numbers. Maybe someone that you can plug and play every week, but I just don't see him as kind of a guarantee type player.
I feel you. Save him for me.
It's fair.
Anyways, I'm going to keep going. Let's just keep going with our guarantees. Somebody I can guarantee on the Rams, Robert Woods. He's locked in as a top 24 wide receiver. He doesn't have the most flashy stats in the world, but if you want a guy that's going to consistently score you points, we're going to have to draft Robert Woods. He's playing with the best quarterback he's ever played with. I think that's going to increase his numbers. I think it's going to increase his touchdowns because that's normally where he lacks. When it comes to safe, he's as close as you get. Does anybody have a stat on where he is going right now?
34 according to ESPN. So third round, pretty solid value there.
Right around the third round.
Yeah, I think you can get very solid value out of Robert Woods that late in the draft. I think he has the potential to be a top dog in the NFL this year. You said top 24. I mean, you could even throw him up in top 15 with Matt Stafford in town now.
Oh, I'm saying I think the lowest he'll finish is 24. I think he's going to finish higher. I'm just not going to kind of go there yet. I love the guy, and he's got other options that'll steal some targets, maybe. I mean, they love Cooper Kupp, but Robert Woods is that guy, man. He's that guy.
I completely agree with that. And, kind of to step away from guarantees, who are some busts that you guys got, Paul? Possibly you want to talk about your biggest bust candidate?
Yeah, so my biggest bust candidate, kind of how you guys already spoke about Deshaun Jackson being a good mentor to Tutu Atwell. I feel like that's probably about as much as he's going to be this year. He's only played in 8 games the past 2 seasons, even though that was on a not so good Philadelphia team after he had gone back. I just feel like he's kind of past his prime. He's past the years of being able to produce at a decent enough fantasy level to be relevant. So I mean, I feel like he even shouldn't be drafted unless it's like a late round flyer. You're just trying to fill out your roster.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. The last real season he had was in 2018 with the Bucs, and he had 700 yards and 4 touchdowns, and that was, when he was 3 years younger. I mean, he's not getting any younger. He's, it's to the age now where he's probably going to be losing some speed. So I agree with that completely. I just don't see Deshaun Jackson being that great of a pick this year in any leagues. I mean, maybe 1 or 2 weeks this year he'll go out and get 20 points, but I don't see much more.
Yeah, I think Deshaun Jackson, he's easy to target as a bust with his injury concerns and just the way his career has gone the last few years. I want to talk about something kind of on the flip side, maybe how Matt Stafford is primed and posed to be. In my opinion, I want to say he's going to be a great quarterback for fantasy this year. I want to draft him. I want to take late round QBs this year. That being said, the Rams are kind of graded as the best defense in the NFL this year. And with the best defense in the NFL comes I don't want to say lackluster, but quarterback production is going to go down fantasy-wise. So that's something to think about when you're drafting Matt Stafford. Do not reach on the guy. If he falls late to you because all the other quarterbacks are going, we can get into a list of quarterbacks that are going later, top quarterbacks, whatever. I just think that as good as our defense is, that's going to slow him down a little bit. Kind of hopefully put some pressure on the Rams' run game. Sound, you got anything to say about that?
Yeah, so everybody's pretty hyped up about Darrell Henderson getting the starting job and everything now with Cam Akers going down. But personally, I see Darrell Henderson as being a possible bust candidate this year. I like him. He's not a bad player or anything, but I think someone like Xavier Jones behind him definitely has real potential to steal his job. I'm not 100% sure about what Xavier Jones' stats were last year, but I'm pretty sure he had 23 rushing touchdowns and 1,300 rushing yards for SMU, which is pretty solid. He's a very shifty guy. I've seen a lot of his highlights and stuff, and I like what I saw out of him. I personally think that Xavier Jones can and will steal touches from Darrell Henderson, resulting in Darrell Henderson not being as valuable as people think he's going to be. So, like, Xavier Jones, definitely a potential sleeper here, but Darrell Henderson, I think he's definitely a reach this year. I think you don't want to draft him too high, and people are drafting him high.
Just to give you those stats, Stone, sorry. Xavier Jones last year, his fifth year of eligibility due to the COVID and all that, coming back for SMU. In 13 games, he had 244 touches for 1,276 yards and 23 touchdowns. Like, it averages out to 5.2 yards per carry, but the 23 touchdowns is pretty damn impressive in my book.
Yeah. And everybody kind of forgets SMU last year was one of those sneaky teams that slipped into the top 25. Like, everyone's, talks about how it's like a smaller school, so, you don't get the talent coming out of smaller schools, but SMU was like a sleeper team last year. Pretty damn good squad they had there.
I like it. Yeah, Sean McVay wasted no time. It did not seem like the Rams panicked when Akers went down. He had a significant injury, season-ending with that Achilles rupture. Hate to see it. I think he was, before that, I was so high on Akers. I think he was about to be top 12 back. I was going to draft him high in fantasy this year if I had the chance. Oh, well, whatever.
You were pretty high on him, weren't you, Mason? Because if I'm not mistaken, you drafted him in the third round last year in one of our drafts.
I messed up on that. That did not play out well. I was not prepared. Do not ever not be prepared in a fantasy football draft. Anyways, so yeah, we didn't waste any time. We did not sign any other backs. I don't know if we even looked into it. I'm sure we looked at it. Maybe we gave Todd Gurley a call. Probably not.
I was just about to bring him up because he's actually still out there on the open market. And at the time of the injury, so was Devontae Freeman, who just recently signed with New Orleans. But we'll save that for another day.
Here, I'll tell you right now, Todd Gurley will not re-sign with the Rams because Sean McVay hated that guy.
Maybe. I think
after he didn't play in the Super Bowl, Sean McVay could not have been happy because Todd Gurley was the number one back, on the planet that year, and then just didn't play in the Super Bowl.
Yeah,
it was so frustrating watching that game.
It had to do with his knee. It was his knee. Yeah. It really was. But no, Darrell Henderson.
One that he had the torn ACL on back in college coming out when the Rams subsequently took him in the top 10.
For the first few years in the NFL, he definitely showed why he was a high pick. That guy was an absolute monster for 4 years.
Oh, yeah.
So now we're going to steer away from the Rams. I'm sorry, Mason. I know you want to talk about them more, but we got to get to the rest of the NFC West here. We have some Arizona Cardinals recent news. Mason, if you want to talk about any of that kind of stuff.
Yeah, so it might not be totally related. It is related in a way if it affects the defense. But Chandler Jones is requesting a trade. I don't know if it has to be with the fact that they have J.J. Watt now. I do know that Hopkins got paid. And I think Chandler Jones was expecting a contract, obviously not like Hopkins, but he was expecting a big money contract. Might be mad because of that. I do know also on the defensive side of the ball, Jordan Hicks once traded. I'm pretty sure he was just informed that he's not going to be the starter. He's I think he would still be a solid rotation guy. So that'll hurt the defense a little bit if they have to trade him. But on other news, on the offensive side of the ball, AJ Green coming out hot in training camp. He's catching tutties. Probably won't do anything this year. I don't know. I mean, I've had high hopes for the guy for the last 3 years. I'm like, he's going to come back. He's going to come back. And now that I'm down on him, he'll probably come back. I have no clue. But yeah, I don't think there's any significant coaching changes for the Cardinals. It'll be pretty similar. Paul, you want to talk about player changes a little bit?
Yeah, so as you already stated, AJ Green, he's new to the roster, kind of takes over for that Larry Fitzgerald role. Even though on the same age, I would still take Larry Fitzgerald every single time, even though he's still slightly older.
Slightly.
James Conner, slightly. James Conner, he's now on the roster. He took over for the absence of Kenyon Drake. They drafted Rondale Moore, who I personally like. At our draft not turned out the way it did for Chicago. He was a player that I was hoping that we'd try to go after. But again, that's a story for another day. A.J. Watt was brought in. He came over from Houston, reunites with DeAndre Hopkins. Pretty good not off-season buddies, but they're pretty good buddies in the real world. And they kind of got together and they were like, hey, let's go win a title in Arizona. We couldn't do it in Houston, so there now.
I like it. I just want to say I love Rondale Moore.
Yep.
He is small, but he is mighty. The dude is crazy explosive, crazy fast. I think that with time, he's eventually going to fill in that role, but first-year wide receivers typically don't do a whole lot, so I really don't expect a whole lot with them with that receiving core they have.
Yeah, I was going to say DeAndre Hopkins, AJ Green, Fitzgerald, Christian Kirk. You got all those guys. It's going to be tough for Rondale Moore to get the targets that you want him to get. And Chase Edmonds, too, a receiving running back kind of player, little hybrid there. And even, a potential sleeper in Max Williams this year at the tight end. They don't have a single other tight end on their team, so who knows? Maybe he pops off, gets a few more catches than the 10 that he had last year. So
I think it says Larry Fitzgerald's a free agent. We might be wrong on the fact that he is a Cardinal. He was up in the air.
No, I knew he wasn't a Cardinal. When I said that, I was just saying he's basically taking over that Larry Fitzgerald role.
My bad.
I know he had contemplated retirement, which I don't think anything was officially finalized for it. So I do think you are correct when you say that he's a free agent at the moment.
Yeah.
I knew he contemplated retirement and everything. I kind of just assumed if he doesn't retire, he's going to come back to Arizona. I couldn't see him playing anywhere else unless he ring chases and goes to Tampa or something like that. But
yeah, I don't think that's even a possibility, to be honest. I think he's going to be Cardinal for his entire career, no matter what.
I love that dude. Yeah, he's definitely one of my favorite all-time receivers.
Is the Cardinals, and I don't like any other team in the division. Let's start off negatively. Let's talk about who we think might be the bust for the Arizona Cardinals.
All right. Well, I'll start it off, and I'll be ballsy because he's got a very high average draft position this year. I'm gonna go with Chase Edmonds because he averaged 4.6 yards per carry last year, or maybe overall. I can't remember the stat I did on that. Obviously, that's very good, but now he's going to have to run against stacked boxes and everything, not being the number 2 running back, I guess you could say, because Kenyon Drake was the one running against stacked boxes last year. This year, Chase Edmonds is now the guy, and I think that's just overall going to hurt his yards per carry. And then also, like we talked about, James Conner is going to come in, and he's going to vulture some of the touches.
I think to kind of build off your point, having a rushing quarterback, they will steal touchdowns as well. So not only James Conner stealing his touchdowns, we're going to see Kyler Murray steal some of those touchdowns as well. That's all I wanted to say about that.
It's just like I really do like Chase Edmonds. I think he's a good running back. It's just it's another factor of being in such a highly talented offense that can steal stuff from you. Like you got 2 good running backs on the team. You have like 2 really good receivers on the team. You got a quarterback who's extremely good at running the ball. It's just like he's losing all his touches right there. So he's still going to get his, in the games, but I just think it could be down as to what some people expect. And I think his average draft position I saw on ESPN is around 66 right now. So not too high, actually. I think around that position it's a respectable pick, but I think he still could be.
Looking it up right now, they say he's 70 for an ADP. Yeah, he's looking at 70 for an ADP. At the top end of where he could project as a running back is number 31. And that's almost the last in the league as like a starter aspect. And I feel like at ADP 70, that's not very good value in my opinion.
Yeah, I could agree with them. So, yeah, he's definitely a potential bust, but who knows? He could actually be a potential steal this year, going that late in drafts. Maybe he blows up and proves everyone wrong, because Mason, he's going to talk about his bust in a minute, but I think someone like Kyler Murray might, regress in the rushing game. So maybe Chase Edmonds makes up for that. But Mason,
Right.
you want to talk about your busts? And this is
Yeah,
the
I wanna-
ballsiest thing I've ever heard in my life.
Yeah, I just wanted to go against the grain. I want to be a little different. I want to give different fantasy perspectives, just because it's fantasy football. You got to think a little bit. Kyler Murray, don't freak
I don't
out.
think there's
whatever.
any grain left with this pig, Mace. And no
Whatever.
offense, but Kyler, he's projected the number one quarterback in the league this year.
I know.
Kind of that same trajectory as what Josh Allen had. But go ahead.
I
We'll
know.
hear you out.
I know. And you have to draft him that way. Now this could be coaches speak, but Cliff Kingsbury does not want Kyler Murray to rush this year. Oh, crazy thing. You know why? Because the dude's like 5'4". He's gonna get hurt. he might. That's one argument. He's so small, he might get hurt. So if his stat line decreases from rushing, say that rushing touchdown is 5 or 6. Say the rushing yards turns into 400. Now we're looking at less than 25 touchdowns probably. I think year 1 he had 20 touchdowns. Year 2 I think he had 26. Maybe the passing touchdowns elevate this year. Maybe not. But if his passing kind of stays where it was and his rushing goes down, he's not going to be the number 1 overall quarterback. And then you just wasted a very high draft pick on a potential starting wide receiver or running back. Okay, that being said, I love Kyler Murray in a keeper league. I have him in an auction league. I love the kid, but I'm just kind of going against the grain. Just food for thought, guys. All right.
With an average draft position on ESPN leagues of 64, I don't think he is too much of a reach in certain leagues. But if you're in competitive leagues that think they need a quarterback, or just in leagues that use 2 quarterbacks in general or something like that, he's going to be a high pick, and he could be one of those top dogs that doesn't produce like you want him to. Kind of like, not like Patrick
That's
Mahomes
what I was about
bad
to say
last year,
is-
but Patrick Mahomes falls in that category of being drafted too early in drafts. So,
That's what I was about to say. It really just depends on the type of league you're playing in, whether it be 2 quarterback league or keeper league or just any of the types we've already discussed. That's just bustability is coming from his average draft position and people expecting him to be the number 1. And you might, like Mason said, you might just overpay for him and not get the same value you're expecting from him.
Yep. And I don't want to like label all these guys on here. Like, we have them labeled as potential busts, and I would say most of these guys that we're saying, it's not because we think they're bad players. It's just because we think they're being drafted where they shouldn't be. We want to get the most value.
Their value doesn't match up with their ADP at the moment.
Yep. So we're trying to kind of break that down and see where we would want you guys to actually take them in a draft, as opposed to just seeing, like, when you're drafting, seeing them on the list at the top and be like, oh, I have to take this guy right now. Like, you want to know where people should be going.
Right. I think we've talked about most of the players on the Cardinals offense. There's one guy we haven't really touched on too much. Stone, do you want to mention your favorite wide receiver of all time? Kind of just talk about why you should draft him. I don't know why you should.
So my favorite wide receiver this generation, probably of all time, actually. I'm a Bears fan, but I would say DeAndre Hopkins is probably my favorite receiver ever. And, I don't really care where his ADP is. I don't care to look it up right now. I think where it says he should be drafted, he probably should. And probably earlier than that, to be honest, like he should every year.
Yeah.
But, he's my guarantee. It's pretty obvious. I don't think you guys could really argue against me at this point. He's got Kyler Murray throwing him the ball. And he's just never had a down year in his entire career. He's probably one of the top 3 receiver of this generation.
I share that
Yeah.
same sentiment with you, Stone. And just like you said, I mean, he played with the likes of T.J. Yates and Fitzpatrick when he wasn't that great, and Brian Hoyer, Brock Osweiler. I mean, the list goes on of the terrible quarterbacks that man had. He still produced 100 reception seasons, 1,600 yards. Like he's just hands down. He's almost on the same plane as like a Megatron. But Megatron had Matt Stafford throwing to him. Of course, for a year or two, he had guys like John Kitna and Dan Orlovsky. But I mean, DeAndre Hopkins,
Good
there's no
stuff,
limit to what
bud.
that man can do.
Good stuff.
Yeah. DeAndre Hopkins, easy. I don't think it gets any easier than that. Mason, you want to talk about your guarantee?
So, like we said, we like to give different opinions. Stone didn't really say not to draft Chase Edmonds, but I see Chase Edmonds having a massive workload. I think he's kind of locked in as a top 24 back. So that's kind of going back to the Robert Woods thing. If you want somebody that's probably going to get you 10 points a week, no matter what, you plug him in in PPR. I think he's going to get tons of dump downs, check downs, whatever you want to call them. He'll be a solid flex option at the very least. And with an average draft pick around 70, not terrible. But I also looked up, he's got a top 10 strength of schedule. That means he's the schedule is working for him. The defense he's going to be playing are not going to be the best defenses against the run. That's another thing to think about when you are playing fantasy football, looking at draft picks, all that good stuff. That's all I really have to say about Chase Edmonds. We talked a lot about him already.
I mean, Chase Edmonds, he has to play against the Rams twice a year and the Niners twice a year as well, so you can't forget about that as well. I mean, that's a pretty
Don't start him against the Rams.
Yeah, that's a pretty tough front seven to start him against. Even the Niners have a pretty solid defense as well, and I mean, even the Seahawks have guys on that line and in their linebacking core that, can shut down the run. So, I mean, it's 6 tough games a year for him possibly, so that could be another thing to look into.
Very good point.
Paul, you want to talk about your guarantee?
Yeah, so similar to kind of what Mason and you had just done, where Chase Edmonds, you're for him or against him, or not, I guess, for or against, but my pick is Kyler Murray, and a lot of it's for the same reasons that Mason kind of sees his regression happening. His designed runs might be down a little bit by Cliff Kingsbury, but he still has that scrambling ability, and I don't think their offensive line is great for protection. It can do the job, but he has that ability to get out of the pocket whenever he needs to make those on-the-run throws. Can keep defenses honest with that ability enough to where he can throw it downfield. I mean, we seen it last year where because of the threat of a run,
Hail Murray.
They completed one of the greatest Hail Marys of all time.
Thanks to DeAndre Hopkins, by the way.
I was just about to say that. D-Hop going up over 3 different defenders to bring that in. But, I mean, I just – for his ADP, where he's going, I think Kyler Murray is still a very good pick, and I think he has the potential to score opponents at the quarterback position and win you weeks. I feel like he's going to be a top 3 quarterback easily. Him, Mahomes, and Josh Allen are probably my top 3 at the moment in fantasy production and points. So, I mean, I know I have a hard time justifying taking quarterbacks really high, but I think Kyler Murray is one that you can have a safe bet that he'll get you those 18 to 24 points a week, and he'll be able to even get you higher. He'll be able to get you those 30 to 35-point games where he basically wins you an entire week.
All right, who are you going to listen to, me or Paul?
I don't know. I don't know if I'd put Kyler Murray in my top 3 quarterbacks, so I think I'd probably put him in the top 5. I think you got to put a little bit of respect on TB12's name. I think that guy's, he's 74 years old turning this year,
and that's 100% understandable. But I mean, he doesn't give you any type of rushing aspect. He might give you those little 1 yard quarterback sneaks. he's got in the bag. I think he's got close to 30 rushing touchdowns from within the one or something like that in his
Vegan
career.
power.
That man's
Just
an
kidding,
animal,
I-
bro. He's got a 60 overall speed rating in Madden this year. The same
Don't
as
say
last
animal. He's a
Again-
vegan. Don't say animal.
Again, I take nothing away from TB12 because I do think he is the greatest quarterback of all time.
Yeah,
Tom Brady's another podcast. I think it's time to move on to that other team I don't like.
Hold up. I don't want to move on just yet. I want to talk about one sleeper that we haven't even said a word about so far. And I don't really know why he's going at rank 322 on ESPN leagues right now. His name's Christian Kirk. I think everybody knows who that guy is. But why is he going so late in drafts this year? Last year he had 50 catches and 600 yards and 6 touchdowns. I mean, is AJ Green supposed to come in and take all that, like those touches from him? I don't think so. I think Christian Kirk's still a solid option in fantasy this year.
I love the path that you're taking, Stone, simply because everybody had suspected Andy Isabella last year to take those touches away from Christian Kirk. And I know we talked about rookie sensation, Rondale Moore, his ability to come into the offense and just kind of seamlessly slide in to take some of those touches as well. But like Mason said, a lot of rookie receivers don't have great production their first year.
Yep.
And so, like you said, I mean, just the stats that he had alone, still having D-Hop on the other side and Larry Fitzgerald still there for his last season. He's somebody that is definitely being undervalued right now.
Yeah, no, Christian.
So you know what's
very
great
good
about
value.
this? Fantasy football is all about taking risks. What are we going to do to, win the
Risk
league?
versus
We're
reward.
not playing.
Yeah.
We're not playing to win or to get second. We're not playing to get third. Although sometimes it pays decently. Doesn't matter. I want to win above all else. Christian Kirk is a guy you can take at the very last pick of your draft, and if he doesn't work out, whatever, you drop him. But let him stay on your roster for a couple weeks. See the Arizona Cardinals game plan. And then basically go from there. You could have a diamond in the rough right there. Everyone's so down on the guy.
I think he's someone who can go out and get you at least 7-8 points a week, like every single week.
Yeah.
He'll go out and get 7 or 8. And I mean, if you're going into like a Monday night game, you need like 5 points. I don't see what would be bad about starting him over somebody else maybe in the flex spot or your third receiver spot, depending on the league you're in. I think he's just a big sleeper this year that nobody's really talking about.
Yeah, I like it.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I mean, just to kind of throw in there at the last second, he has that deep downfield ability. I mean, he showed it last year with multiple touchdowns of 50 yards or more from Kyler Murray. He was kind of that deep ball guy to go to when DeAndre Hopkins was double teamed or maybe not open, or he's out there running those little out routes so he can get the first downs. And Kyler Murray, he gets out of the pocket and he sees Christian Kirk streaking wide open, 10 yards behind a safety or a corner, whoever he's got beat, and touchdown. So I think that's a very safe pick towards the end of your draft if he's still there and available. Like Stone said, I think that's somebody or Mason, I think that's somebody who can help you win championships, not just contend for a championship in your league.
Yep. Okay, so now we can move on to another team that Mason hates, and I'm going to guess he was talking about the Seahawks.
Yeah, I don't like Seahawks. Whatever. I respect all the teams. Calm down. All right. I guess let's just jump into recent news. So, Seahawks are being pretty good about this. I think all but one player on the team is vaccinated. It could be all of them by now, which would make them one of the highest, basically the best team in the league about vaccinations. So, good for them. Golf clap, whatever. So one big thing that's kind of popped up recently, Rashad Penny is down from 235 to 223. Okay. That is kind of big news for a guy that is coming into his final year on his contract. It's time to make some headway. Actually, I have more on that. Let's kind of go over to some of the coaching changes. I do know that.
Hold on, I just want to throw one thing in there quick that I recently seen. Wayne Brown, one of their starting tackles, is seeking a contract extension, and I don't think he's being very generous towards the Seahawks, which is completely in his right. He feels he's underpaid. He wants to grab the bag, per se. And they've seemed unwilling to kind of do so at the moment. But now they have Russell Wilson chirping in their ear again, just like last year, that he needs offensive line help. I mean, man is extremely crazy when it comes to his diets. He's put in millions of dollars to keep himself healthy within his diets, his training, and being up there in age now. I think Russell Wilson's probably close to 32, 33, somewhere around there. I mean, he's still one of the top quarterbacks, condition-wise, just play-wise, physically in the league. And not have an offensive line that's been that great throughout his career, it's really baffling. But again, like, he's kind of chirping in their ear right now, like, hey, you better sign this man, otherwise he might be on his way out, just like he tried to force this year. And it almost happened with my Chicago Bears. Thankfully, it didn't. Hail Justin Fields. Again, that's for another day.
Hail Justin Fields, baby.
I do have some crap to talk. We lost the Rams. When I say we, lost Shane Waldron, one of our acting offensive coordinators. He went over to Seattle. I don't know if we expect to see some Sean McVay-esque plays or kind of similar offense, but the Seahawks are clearly cheating, trying to bring over the guy from the Rams. They're going to steal our whole game plan. So if the Seahawks beat us this year, that's the only reason why. But no, Pete Carroll, he's hard on the run game, man. Like, he's going to run the ball. You know, that whole let Russ cook thing. They let him cook a little bit, but they're going to run the ball. All right. That's all I have for coaching changes.
All right. So we want to step in with our busts here. Paul, if you want to go first with your bust candidate.
Yeah, so Chris Carson, I mean, he's never healthy. Outside of his rookie season where he missed 12 games, he's missed 7 in the last 3 seasons. But it just seems like he's one of those running backs that no matter what you do, where you draft him, late, early, it just seems like he never produces for you. On top of that, he's had 10 fumbles just in the past 3 years alone. That's enough to warrant me from wanting to draft him, because you never know if that's going to end up costing you a fantasy win. You could maybe have 2 points or something. You're up 2 points going into the final game on a Monday night, and he fumbles. Well, he fumbles to end the game or something like that. Boom, there goes your points. There goes your win. I just don't think he's a player you can really count on. He's put up some decent numbers, but it's just one of those things for me. I've always been burned anytime I've had him, and so I typically like to stay away from him.
So I agree with Paul here for Chris Carson. He's my bust candidate as well. However, I'm going to stand up for the guy a little bit because, Paul said he had 10 fumbles in the last 3 years, and I believe that's a true stat. But last year he only had 1 fumble, and that's not a bad thing, actually. Like, that's showing he's improving his ability to hold on to the ball a little bit. Now, why do I have him as a bust candidate if I know that, he goes out and he produces stats every year? Like, he's a very talented running back. I really like the guy. Why do I have him as a bust? Well, his injuries, like Paul said. He's missed at least 2 games the past, I think, 3 years. He played 15 games in 2019, so he missed 1 game. But, I mean, he hasn't finished an entire season yet throughout 4 years of his career. And do I expect him to do it this year? Probably not. And that would be largely in part to the training that he gets off the field. Mason likes to rave about that. Do you want to tell the people about that kind of stuff?
Like I kind of told you guys in the first podcast when I kind of butchered my intro, I'm into fitness, okay? I've got all kinds of certifications. I live, eat, breathe, sleep, fitness training, follow all kinds of stuff on Instagram. Like, I like to see who's training who. So I follow Chris Carson's trainer. He's kind of heavily hated in the strength conditioning community. He does all kinds of weird things that just have no real science behind. But I do not know how long Chris Carson has been with this guy. So there's 2 options. There's A, he's been with this guy forever and he still keeps getting hurt. Or B, he just sought out this trainer for some stability training because they do a crap ton of stability training. Maybe that helps. I don't know. The training is very unconventional, not stuff that you would see typically done in a typical strength and conditioning room. So I don't want to say he's out or it's not going to work. I think there's a maybe or it depends asterisk by that statement.
I will just chirp in and say if Chris Carson has had that trainer his whole life, then yes, do not expect him to play a full season this year.
And Chris Carson should have fired him. But anyways, it might be about the tornado, but that's besides the fact. I'm going to power through this.
All right, yeah, talk about your bust then. Power through that, Nader.
All right, so I do not like Tyler Lockett this year. Plenty of people do. Yep.
Wowzers.
I know, right?
Wow.
Scared the crap out of me.
That was impressive.
Told you. There was tornadoes up here last night all over the suburbs, and I think it's about to hit again. But we're good. We're good, I think. So Tyler Lockett, don't like him this year. His ADP is around 60. That's around the 5th round. Not bad for a guy that could end up in the top 24 range for wide receiver. But his production is, you look at it, he gets around 1,000 yards and about 10 touchdowns, I think it was, last year. You look at that and you're like, good, I love it. I'll take the draft pick. Look a little deeper into that. The guy had a majority of his production in like 3 games. So I think it was the first half of the season he put up. And then I think towards the back end, he was just hit or miss, okay? And when it comes to winning a championship league, when Tyler Lockett is putting up the numbers, you then have to start him. It doesn't matter if you have him. You kind of have to start him because he could be that boom or bust. I don't like that. I don't like playing fantasy football like that. So I'm out on Tyler Lockett. He will have games this year. He will be productive. I just don't want the headache. That's all I have to say about Tyler.
I've never
Tyler
been a
Headache.
big fan of Tyler Headache myself, but I know that Paul does.
I'd like to interject. Yeah, I'd like to interject a little bit because he's actually my guarantee this year.
I know he is. I don't care.
So, and that's fine. That's what this podcast is for: differing opinions and just trying to help people out the way they see fit. In his 6-year career, he's missed 1 game. Started every single game. The only game he's missed was his sophomore year. Every single year, his stats have increased. His targets went from 110 last year to 132. His receptions in the last 2 years from 82 to 100. In the last 3 seasons alone, he's put up 3,000 yards and 28 touchdowns. His average yard production over the course of those 3 seasons sitting at about 13.5, 14 yards per catch. I feel like even though Mason said a lot of that production was in a couple different games, and it's not really spread out throughout the entire year.
It might have been more than 3.
That's a type of player to me that's very consistent. That's always going to be consistent.
This lightning is absolutely wild.
We'll let that storm pass for a second.
Yeah. All right, you're good.
Can't control Mother Nature. Third time's the charm, right? And I just think he's one of those players that's going to be consistent. He's shown that ability to be consistent with Russell Wilson on the deep ball, to have spectacular catches, even for his size. He's a bit on the lower side, about 5'11", 6 foot maybe. Then also having DK on the opposite side of him, it's just he's not going to be a player that's going to get double teamed often. And I just think he has a chance to continue to up his totals like he has every single season. If not, then I think it's going to be kind of a plateau situation where he's still going to be around the same number. He's going to have 130 plus targets, because outside of Gerald Everett, I really don't think that they've brought in anybody else to kind of contend for a lot of those other targets from Russell Wilson. And I think that's actually kind of a good transition, because I think that's Stone's guarantee.
Yeah, so my guarantee would be
I'm sorry.
My guarantee would be Gerald Everett. Yeah, we're going to try to speed things along here since Mason's in the middle of a tsunami right now. We'll try to get him out of that. We'll try to hurry things up here, but my guarantee is Gerald Everett. He's always been a pretty solid target for the Rams, and, he usually averaged around 60 or so, but I think he's going to have closer to 80 this year as the third option for Seattle. I think he's just going to get more opportunity than he's ever had before with Russell Wilson at the helm of quarterback. So I do think that, Will Dissly as the backup tight end can steal a little bit from him. He could shock a few people and do pretty solid this year, but overall I think Gerald Everett's a pretty safe tight end.
I do have one cool story. When I was living in Quincy, my good buddy Nolan worked with a guy that played college football with Gerald Everett, and I'd hang out with him every once in a while, and he would tell me some cool stories. So I have some weird connection to Gerald Everett, my boy from the Rams. Whatever. All right. So are we moving on to my guarantee?
Yep, you guys tell your guarantee real fast.
All right. I think it is quite obvious. I got the easiest guarantee of the bunch. DK Metcalf. He has not even come close to reaching his potential, okay? And over the last 2 years, he's managed to achieve 141 receptions and 2,203 yards with 17 touchdowns. I think that number is only going to go up. The dude, you guys have all seen it, and if not, go check him out. He is a freak athlete. The dude's fast. He's big. He's strong. He's just dominant. I think he's just going to keep getting better. I think he slowed down a little last year after Jalen Ramsey kind of shut him down a little bit. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, that's all I have to say. Okay, he's just straight stud.
To speak on that speed aspect real quick, for a man who's about 6'4", 6'5", 240 pounds, the fact that he was able to run down Budda Baker to prevent a pick six was absolutely incredible.
Hey,
goal line to goal line, that man hit a top speed and chased down a safety who's about 5'10", maybe 200 pounds. That's absolutely incredible for a man that big.
He ran a 10.45 in that American race that they did. I don't know if it was American specifically, but I remember watching it. He ran a 10.45, and as a track athlete, that's obviously very fast. A lot of people were saying he should be in the Olympics. He's not that fast. If he trained for it, he could get up there, but he's never going to be an Olympian. But he is still very fast. 10.45 is nothing to joke about. Okay, let's move on.
Stone knows speed.
Let's move on to the 49ers. We got to kind of hurry up here. We only got 13 more minutes, so we'll try to kind of go through this a little faster for you guys. Mason, quickly glance over the recent news if you want to for the Niners.
Yeah, so Niners hit a pretty big landmark, landing Fred Warner for a 5-year, $95 million extension. I think that makes him the highest paid linebacker in the league. Makes sense. The guy's a straight baller. Shanahan expects to play Trey Lance in 2021. I know original reports said he wouldn't play or he wouldn't start. But now after training camp, Lance is playing. He's playing his tail off. The guy's proving why he's a top pick in the NFL drafts. More than likely, Garoppolo is still the starter.
Not to cut you off, but I actually read an article recently that a lot of teams or GMs in the league are kind of speculating that Shanahan is sticking with Garoppolo as their starter and letting him kind of prove himself, I guess, that he can be good still and play healthy so far in training camp and the preseason in order to entice some of the other teams that might be looking for a quarterback, just so that way he doesn't actually have to make the decision to bench Jimmy G for Trey Lance. But I know he's very high on Trey Lance, and it's looking like he's pushing for a starting job sooner rather than later.
So
love it.
Talking about Trey Lance and all, I like him, and I like where he's picked in the draft. I could see him possibly being the bust of the quarterbacks that were drafted up there. Him or Zach Wilson. They're kind of like, I could see it from being either of those guys. I think all the other guys would probably be fine. But
yeah,
that's my bust of this season, Trey Lance, because, he's not really going high in drafts, if at all, but a lot of people do expect him to be a good quarterback. And I see Jimmy G as a big-time sleeper this year and having a comeback season for sure. I think he's going to probably start out the rest of the year, and we'll see Trey Lance more in a I guess, like Jameis Winston type role that you saw him last year for New Orleans, where he'd come in and like throw a ball and then leave the game. Maybe not Jameis Winston specifically.
Maybe Taysom Hill, like going making those running plays.
I would say Taysom Hill, but Taysom Hill is catching the ball and stuff, and they're not going to do that
True.
to Trey Lance. But
that's true.
So it's kind of a combination of the two. He's going to go out there and throw, and he's going to go out there and run, but he's not going to catch Taysom Hill.
So would it be a similar situation to kind of what? Are you saying like would they both be on the field at the same time or just one or the other? Because Nagy kind of did that with Mitch Trubisky last year when he tried to sit him for a little bit, almost tried to run like that Taysom Hill while he was on the field with Nick Foles at the same time. So is that kind of what you're looking at? Or are you talking about just one over the other on the field, him coming in for a play or two?
Under a defense like Kyle Shanahan, you could definitely see that. I see it more as like him coming in for a play and taking over the quarterback. But under Kyle Shanahan, I wouldn't count out them both being on the field at the same time because Kyle Shanahan's a very good offensive-minded coach. So I could definitely see them doing something along those lines.
That boy likes to run the ball.
Mason, do you want to talk about your bust that I, don't agree with at all? But,
Hey, I've kind of been on this for a couple years now. Probably not the best statement, but it's a bold move, Cotton.
Is it fair to say you've been wrong every year?
No, I'm never wrong. That's why you guys should listen to this podcast because we're always right. This guy's a monster. George Kittle. He's coming off of a slightly disappointing 2020. He missed 8 games due to lower leg injuries. The possibility of Trey Lance being quarterback might hurt him, might help him. I don't know. I just want to stick that might asterisk in there. This guy's got a second-round draft grade because of how high tight ends are valued right now in fantasy football. I just think that if I'm a tight end this high, I'm going with the surefire Travis Kelce or Darren Waller. I think those guys are 2 better picks. Kittle, if he's still playing around with injuries, and he could lose targets, I think, possibly to some of the other guys on the team. Just a thought. Still, the guy's a beast. I'm just not taking him in my second round. Okay, that's basically all I mean when I say he's going to be a bust.
Okay.
Just to interject a little bit, Darren Waller's actually missed the last 5 games, or not the last 5 games, but the last 5 practices. Not really sure what the full injury extent is, but that just might be something that possibly lingers into the preseason or maybe even into the regular season. I'm not sure if he'll be put on the PUP list or anything like that. But that's just what I've been reading so far. So
good point. I actually didn't see that.
Darren Waller, he did put up really good numbers last year, and he was kind of that breakout tight end that nobody really expected. Some people may have because they were high on him, but as a converted receiver to tight end, I feel like that's just one of those things that right now he has missed the last 5 practices. And from what I've been reading, the news isn't great on the injury. They're kind of keeping it hush-hush. But they think that it might linger a little bit.
All right.
So I guess we can move into Paul's bust now after that whole debacle.
So as a fantasy player, I love to take chances like Mason was talking about earlier, those risk versus rewards. I love to take chances on young players, rookies, second-year players. I'd say probably about 40% of the time, I happen to take them a year or two before they actually produce. And I really hope this isn't the case with this man, but Debo Samuel, I thought he was going to be a great player his rookie year for San Francisco, and he showed promise. His stats in his rookie season, he put up in 11 games started and 15 games played overall. He put up 57 catches on 81 targets for 800 yards and 3 touchdowns. Fast forward to last year, the second year in the league, a lot of players happen to hit that sophomore slump, is what we call it in football, and it definitely hit Debo Samuel. He started 5 games, only played 5, had 33 catches for 390 yards and 1 touchdown. To me, that's just, it doesn't look like it's going to get much better if he can't stay healthy. If he does come back and he plays a full season, I could be completely wrong, and I'll accept that when that time comes. But with the addition of like what Mason talked about, Trey Lance of being a running quarterback and Kyle Shanahan loving to get his running backs involved. I know Debo has some rushing ability. They give him jet sweeps out of the backfield, this and that. But at the moment, I don't think he'll be a very productive fantasy player. And I could be wrong entirely. He might produce, and it might be something similar to what his first year was, where he's got 60 catches for 800 yards. But I mean, just at the moment, that's kind of where I stand on it.
Do you know who Debo Samuel is? Debo Samuel just so happens to be an off-brand Brandon Nyuk, who would be my guarantee of this year. Brandon Nyuk, I mean, they're the same player essentially. They do the same things, same gadget things, but Brandon Nyuk stays healthy the whole year. I will say their stats were very similar from their first years. Ayuk had 825 yards and 7 touchdowns, and then Debo had 961 and 6 touchdowns. And I expect Ayuk's production to stay ahead of Debo's. And Ayuk did all those stats in 12 games, and I think you said that Debo did it in 11 games. So, I mean, like, these stats are very similar together.
11 games started and 15 overall played.
Okay. So he played in 15, and Ayuk only did in 12. So if you put into last year's pace of 16 games, Ayuk would have had 1,100 yards and 9.3 touchdowns. And that's just something to keep in mind. Someone like Ayuk doing that in his rookie season. Sophomore slumps are a thing. But Jimmy G's coming back. George Kittle is coming back, so that could hurt. Debo's coming back. So there's all these factors coming in. It's a huge question mark as to who the guy in San Francisco is going to be. I think Brandon Ayuk is your safest receiver in San Francisco. Mason?
One thing I can guarantee on the 49ers offense is that Raheem Mostert will get hurt, okay? That being said, I love the guy. He's still a decent draft pick right now. You can kind of get him and hope to get some production out of him, but I wouldn't spend too high of a draft pick on the guy. But other than that, I love Brandon Ayuk. I think he's going to be solid. I think he's going to fill into his role even more, having a quarterback like Jimmy G at the helm. He's just going to be an all-around top guy that'll produce. What is Brandon Ayuk's average draft position right now? All right, he is averaging 6th round, about 605. Not too bad for a guy that could finish as a top 24 wide receiver and have a whole bunch of targets come his way.
He has the skill to be a top 15 receiver. He's definitely got the skill set. Paul, do you want to go into your guarantee? We trying to wrap things up here. Yeah. Got a few more minutes left.
Yeah, so we've already discussed him. Me and Stone are kind of on the similar page here. George Kittle. I honestly think he's the most athletic and best tight end behind Travis Kelce and only Travis Kelce. Obviously, Travis Kelce's numbers speak for themselves. We all know that, what he's produced over the last 5 to 7 years. And I honestly think George Kittle is going to be the same way. If it hadn't been for somebody taking, I wouldn't call it a cheap shot, but a low shot on George Kittle last year, where he got his lower leg injury from, I feel like he would have been on the field. He would have been a beast, just like his last 2 years in the league, last 3. He's one of those guys that he's just a nightmare mismatch. No matter where you put him, you can put him on the outside to play receiver. You can put him on the inside in the slot. You can run him from in the tight end position. It's just you can put him anywhere and he'll look to produce. He's one of the best athletes that they have on the field at any given moment on that offense. I don't think it matters if it's Trey Lance or Jimmy G. I think whoever's out there, he's just going to be a security blanket. Most of them elite top-tier tight ends are. Their quarterbacks know where they're going to be. They know where they're supposed to be, and they just produce. It's one of those things. And for me, George Kittle, he's very I don't know the word exactly I'm looking for, but he's where he's being drafted. No, where he's being drafted. I was trying to look for the word of like where he's being drafted. It's very deserving. I think he's going maybe the beginning of the 3rd round, late 2nd. To me, that's an absolute steal if you value the tight end. And where you're sitting, you maybe don't like the running backs as much, or you don't like the receivers that are sitting there facing you. I mean, being able to take that top tier talent, tight end, I think it's almost a no-brainer. And with him, the Darren Waller news of his potential injury and lingering, because I would have put him, Travis Kelce, and George Kittle all in the top three. And I'd say they're all easily a top three round picks.
It's unarguable.
Let's get in one thing. Let's get it on air. Let's get it live. Who's going to win the division? I'll start. The Rams are going to win the division. Stone?
Rams.
Paul?
I'm going completely against the grain. I'm taking Arizona. I think the second year of Kyler Murray, third year overall in that offense, and the emergence of DeAndre Hopkins in their first year together, I think they're just going to do wonderful things on offense. I think they have a chance to supplant LA as the division winner, and I think that's just where I'm at on that. I know it's kind of out there. It's against the grain because, like you said, Rams have the best defense. They have to face them twice a year. Seattle's defense is no slouch either, but I think Arizona's finally going to take that next step. I think they went 8-8 last year, narrowly missed out on the playoffs, but they were in almost every single game. I want to say up through like week 10 or 11, their offense was number one in the league. And depending on, regardless of playing some of those defenses, can't fully stop an offense that's number one in the league. They're number one for a reason. And I think they're just going to continue to build upon that.
It's the best division in the NFL. I think nobody can have any doubts against that. I mean, when you're talking about the worst team possibly being the Seahawks or Cardinals,
49ers, yeah.
Niners. I'd say the Niners are one of the most polished teams in the league. So I think the Rams
are
going to take
but
the
I
division,
mean, I feel like over the past couple of years, they haven't completely overhauled the roster enough to where it warrants them outside of that potential Super Bowl run that they had against the Chiefs. They've shown that they kind of choke sometimes and they don't always come out and play to 100%. And it's hard for me to trust the 49ers as much as some of the other teams in the division, like you said. But
thank you for listening. If you're still here, remember to follow us on all our socials. If you're watching on YouTube, we're on Spotify under the same name, The Fantasy Few, vice versa. We have a Facebook group that we made called The Fantasy Few. On Instagram, we are The Fantasy Few, no capitals, and Twitter, we are The Fantasy Few, capital T, capital F, and capital F. Thanks for stopping by. We're going to review on episode 3 the NFC East, I believe, and possibly, if that goes by fast, we will also talk about the NFC North. Thank you for all listening. Mason, Paul, any goodbye messages?
Thank you, guys. Please like, subscribe, tell your friends. It'll make it easier for us to put more content out faster and more quality content out faster. Paul?
Yeah, same thing. It's just one of those, we're kind of just up and coming. We're starting out our podcast. So far, they've gone very well, in our opinion. We want to keep putting out this content. We want to keep doing it quick. Trying to get 5 episodes out by August 21st. Whether that's doable, not for sure. Hopefully we'll get there, though. Hopefully we'll keep doing this, do all of our division breakdowns. So, yeah, keep coming back. Like Mason said, share everything on social media. Get your friends involved. If you know anybody in your leagues or maybe you just want that competitive advantage, go ahead and keep coming back every week, listening to us, and we'll help you as much as we can.
Feel free to ask us any question on any social media. We are happy to answer on air on the podcast. We will spend some time at the end of podcasts if you guys would like answering your questions specifically. Thank you for listening. Fantasy Few out.